This might actually be the fifth time I've tried to record this fucking review, and I gotta say, I wasn't actually as mad about it up until now, mostly because my laptop, even though it has 500 gigs, is just fucking dicking me around and is refusing to film anything in 4K 30 frames per second, the highest quality, because I want to give out top quality content for you guys. But apparently, HD is the only thing that it wants to fucking do with me. I'm fucking wasting my time on a movie that is so boring and so stupid that I'm not even entirely sure why. No, I do know why I saw this movie. I saw it for three reasons. One, because I had the day off, I have the place to myself, I needed something to do, I needed an excuse to go outside. And the second one is my theater has finally reopened some screening rooms that they were renovating to put in these recliner seats, which really goes to show if they're willing to spend months playing less movies than usual, meaning less money than usual, in order for us to pay extra for these recliner seats, it's quite a gamble that they expect to pay off. But as comfy as those seats were to sit in, and boy, believe me, did it feel good actually putting my feet up without being a pain in the ass, people were still a pain in the ass. And I would argue that recliner seats would give people an incentive to be more, to be even bigger dickheads. Let me put it to you this way: the lady next to me was watching other stuff and making a phone call during the movie halfway through. And I actually said out loud, I said it as loud as I'm talking to you right now, are you fucking serious? And everybody heard me. Everybody decided to buck up and shut up, and I'm glad that they did, but that's... I lost my temper when I should have, and pretend to be surprised while you're watching that right now. And the third reason was I thought that there was a small bit of potential for this movie because it does something I've never seen before with a novel adaptation. It adapts an entire chapter that, given the fact that it takes place aboard a ship where Dracula has all of these sailors cornered, could be its own short story. And it's such a unique premise for a monster movie. It has great actors like Corey Hawkins, Eileen Franciosi, and Liam Cunningham. I thought there could at least be something good about it. There were two minor things that I probably thought were passable at best. For one, the acting was decent. Corey Hawkins is stuck playing a generic good guy whose only real character trait is his moral compass, but at the same time, Hawkins is that good an actor and so charismatic on screen that you don't really care. It's his presence that elevates the material. Same thing with Aileen Franciosi as the one person on the ship who has the slightest bit of experience with Dracula. It takes her about halfway through the movie to really have any presence, but when she does get it, she earns every single second she's on screen, and it makes me wish that the majority of her movies I liked, because other than Nightingale, I don't think the majority of them are that good. I was expecting Liam Cunningham, of all people, to be really good at playing a sailor, let alone a captain of a ship, and you know for a fact going in that he's supposed to be the wise mentor of the group, but he gives the most basic horoscope and cookie cutter philosophical tidbits about life that honestly I can't even remember half of them. The only thing I really remember about him is that halfway through the movie, when a family member of his is attacked by Dracula, he does start to lose his mind. He does become more unraveled, and it led to one moment that I could have laughed out loud at if it was, well, it wasn't intentionally funny, but it could have been if it was even more over the top than it was. But yeah. And David Dastmalchian, I had no idea he was even in the movie until he popped up on screen. And he was probably the one character with a shred of complexity. He's a dick and total scumbag to the sailors, but it's not because he's a selfish or evil person. It's because he takes his role as first mate of the Demeter really seriously. And when other sailors actually discover things that he hadn't or come to the same conclusions that he had before he said it out loud, he'll actually flat out agree with them. He actually has very balanced morals and a good love-hate relationship between the other sailors that it felt genuine. It felt justified. And the other thing I will say is that when Dracula is on screen, there is at least an attempt to blend prosthetics, makeup, and CGI in order to create this iconic monster and try at the very least to make some good kills. there are some close-ups of Dracula grabbing other people where you can tell that his arm is covered in makeup. And I do like that they went the extra mile, even when it comes down to filming a few things at sea, like very surface level stuff like seaports or the one or two moments where the waves actually do crash against the actors while they're steering the ship. It is more practical than digital. But that's really where the compliments stop. And I don't even know how to segue into the negatives about this movie because there are so many of them. The big one being nearly every line of dialogue in this film is exposition. It's a big problem that period horror movies have where they try to be realistic about how people spoke during the time period, but also make it accessible to modern audiences, and the writers just couldn't do it. Hell, they explain so much right from the very first scene. The literal first shot of the film is a title card that gives you the exact plot synopsis before the movie even starts. And then, in case you seriously didn't know that this was a Dracula movie, says this is based off of a chapter of Dracula. And that also kind of works against the movie. The suspense is immediately sucked out the second you see these title cards because in case it was a surprise to you that Dracula was the villain, you know good and hell well that he's going to be a vampire. You know he's going to survive. I don't think I'm giving that part away because the last scene of the movie is one of the crappiest setups for a sequel I've ever seen. And because we know it's Dracula, but the characters don't, we're instantly miles ahead of them in terms of processing information, when really we should be discovering all the horrific details about Dracula alongside them. Some vital information they discover off-screen and then explain it on-screen. Like the one kid of the ship discovers a stowaway talking and explaining herself for the first time off-screen. And then when we cut back to him, he goes, oh yeah, her name's this and that, she speaks this kind of language and a little bit of English. And I'm just sitting there going, wouldn't it have been a better scene if she woke up from a nightmare or something like that, and with this kid around, and us knowing for a fact that Dracula stowed her on the ship with him, we wouldn't know for sure whether she's innocent or if she's already an infected vampire, especially when the only one around her is a little kid and much more vulnerable. Wouldn't that have been a better opportunity? I guess it doesn't really matter, because with all the exposition characters explain to each other, they do not do a good job at understanding what everyone else says, or even remembering it, because, God, these sailors are so fucking stupid that they make Captain Feathersword look like Captain Sparrow. Hell, Captain Feathersword could kill Dracula easier than these numbnuts. Let me put it to you this way. There is literally a scene where they go split up in order to search for Dracula in broad daylight, but they don't know that broad daylight kills him. I'll get to that later. But they leave the kid all by himself in a locked room, because apparently he can't wander off and get chased back by a creature or whatever, which is exactly what happens. And when the crew members discover what a dipshit decision that is, they waste 3 times trying to reach through a broken window to grab a lock, when they have guns and can barge in through the door or shoot the lock off. But it took them like weeks into the story for them to actually start arming themselves. I'm not sure why they thought it was safe enough. Apparently this is a time period where nobody knows what vampires are. The word vampire is never even said during the near 2-hour runtime, which I found very, very confusing, to say the least. Hell, Franciosi's character doesn't even know the weaknesses or strengths of Dracula, even though she has spent a ridiculously amount of painful time with him. And she's not traumatized to the point where she doesn't remember anything. So there's no excuse as to why the expert on Dracula within the movie really is kind of a useless expert, in all honesty. Am I repeating myself? I don't even know what I just said. Look, I wouldn't mind if there were so many plot holes, or if it was an audio book of a chapter as opposed to an adaptation. If it was scary, or if it was campy like a modern day Hammer horror movie. Red, neon blood, gory over-the-top deaths, intentionally hammy acting. But this movie takes itself so seriously with the amount of pseudo-philosophical monologues everybody gives about whether life should be experienced or understood. Oh, excuse me. Or what the point of survival or making an attempt to survive is when the world is so cruel and some fates are just inevitable no matter what. But there's nothing deep about any of this shit. This is the most cookie cutter Andrew Tate inspirational advice that you could possibly come up with. And the worst part is, Dracula is not scary in this film, partly because they go back and forth from trying to slowly build him up over the course of the movie by just hitting you over the head with foreshadowing over what's in the crate, what does he look like in the shadows, and then they just show him out of nowhere with no anticipation, and then go back to trying to build him up again. And his design looks fucking stupid. He looks like a 7-foot golem with the face of Morbius. It would have been a hell of a lot more entertaining if he just went, "It's Morbin time." The scares are jump scares or false alarms with taps on the shoulders. The music is so bombastic and loud to compensate for how there's no scary imagery in it whatsoever, except for one moment during a rainstorm where a kid is standing above a dead body and it's raining blood on him. That image was cool, but it wasn't that gory. In fact, the only gore that was even remotely frightening was images of dead livestock, and because they're dead animals, that's just too easy of a scare. As for the humans, they just get bit on the neck and nothing else. Their necks don't even splatter all over the place, which was extremely disappointing. This whole movie was disappointing. If there were more moments like the raining blood, I probably could have recommended this on a guilty pleasure level, but Last Voyage of the Demeter is guilty of sucking. And if I seriously do not get this video edited on my computer once this is all done, well, you guys will find out.